Good evening. It's my pleasure to call to order this June 20th, 2024 Curriculum and Pupil Services Committee meeting of the School District of Haverford Township, and thank the folks who have been waiting for this meeting to get started after our two previous meetings this evening. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I will turn the proceedings over to our Assistant Superintendent, Jen Saxa.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. We are happy to have two presentations this evening. First up will be our Diversity and Inclusion Goal Update. If you'll recall, this is one of our 3 strategic plan goals. We have provided updates on the other 2 goals throughout the school year, and it's Goal 3's turn this evening. So we have several folks here to present that, led by Mrs. Christina Carter. So we're excited to have that this evening. And then we have Mr. Donaghy and members of his team for our presentation on the Haverford High School Targeted School Improvement Plan. So we'll start with diversity and inclusion. And Mrs. Carter, if you want to get us started. Thank you.
Sure, I'm happy to. Right, I'll wait for you. I don't know what to do from this point. Okay, there we go. All right. Good evening, members of the board. We're excited to come and share. Can you hear me? It is on. Does it need to? Let me move it in a little bit. Thank you. Is that better? Perfect. All right. Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for allowing us to come and share the update on our Goal 3 of diversity and inclusion. We have been busy in the district working on this goal across all of our buildings and departments, and we are proud of the accomplishments that have come from the work that we are doing. So you have here tonight several of our co-chairs of our committees, which you'll learn a little bit more about, and you've heard about before, that will stand before you and share some of our accomplishments, our next steps, and what we're looking forward to. So let's get started. So again, you're aware of the strategic plan as we continually talk about it, which will be ending in 2025, but we really have our action plan that aligns with it, that we work alongside the strategic plan for. So we'll be continuing to do this work in our priority areas for this upcoming year and continue to align our plan along with the strategic plan as we move forward. So before we move on, we always like to kind of talk through common terms when we think about it in our professional developments and in the classroom. And in diversity and inclusion and a lot of what's happening in society, we always find like we might all have different definitions of things. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, do not worry. But they're here for you to refer back to so that you know our common definitions that we're using from different literature that we have as a district and what we've been referring to over the years, and any acronyms that might come up that are there. So if you have questions about them or need to refer back to them, they are there for you to utilize. So as a reminder, we talked about this last year when we introduced our Diversity and Inclusion Action Plan. We have 4 priority areas. We are looking to increase the likelihood of historically underrepresented students in enrichment or higher level courses in gifted education. We are looking to increase the representation of diverse staff and identify ways to retain those currently employed. Our third one is we are looking to implement culturally responsive teaching and practices in the classroom and professional development that aligns with that. And our last one is to create a space where all students, staff, families, and a community have a strong sense of belonging, and you'll hear that language come up even more as we present. Each priority that you see here has a list of implementation steps that our committees work through, and the co-chairs lead people in their subcommittees through these steps to make sure that we're working towards our goal. So when you see the presentations tonight from each subcommittee, you'll see them in a similar format. So if you have questions to refer back to, you'll see the accomplishments, the next steps, or questions or considerations that still remain based off of the work that they're doing, which sometimes we consider the word barrier, but we still also question what can we do to continue to move past it, because we know D&I can't be done overnight. So we have to ask ourselves some questions, and we believe in being reflective practitioners. So you'll see questions that might pop up. To get us started, I have Mrs. Mastrocola, and she is going to start on priority one.
Hello. Is that good? My name is Beth Mastrocola, and I'm the co-chair of Priority Number 1, Disproportionality in Gifted and Enrichment or Higher Level Classes. Our team has been working over the past year at the elementary level to refine the approach to testing and identification of new students for the Gifted program in alignment with the determinations from the Gifted audit. We have been encouraging elementary principals while reviewing data to provide more opportunities and provide support through MTSS to get more children into the higher level classes. And finally, we have been encouraging gifted teachers to review classroom data beyond the gifted screening to identify students with strong data who should be reconsidered possibly for gifted screening. At the middle school, they continue to review students' academic performance each quarter to identify students who have demonstrated the ability to advance to higher level courses or may qualify for gifted services. And for the 23-24 school year, they have moved the following number of students up a level: 10 students in 6th grade, 20 total in 7th grade, and 7 total in 8th grade. I also want to take a minute to provide more details about our gifted identification district-wide. I'm referring to the chart on the right-hand side. Currently in our district, we have a 7.3% identification rate for gifted students, which brings us to 486 students total. With the gifted teachers working to identify more students who may qualify for gifted services, they are helping us to decrease the disproportionate representation of historically underrepresented students in gifted education. On this slide, we have provided an update on our risk ratio, or likelihood of each subgroup being identified as gifted. When the goal was developed for the action plan last year, we used the 21-22 school year as our baseline. This baseline was developed using the guidance and formula recommended by PDE in the Significant Disproportionality Guide. You will see on this chart our baseline year next to our current school year. We are currently striving towards proportionate representation of all student groups based on their representation in the district population. Our goal is to get as close to 1.0 as possible. Groups that are greater than 1.0 have a higher likelihood of being identified compared to groups with a less than 1.00 who are less likely to be identified. We will never be lower than 0 because that would mean that no one exists in that population group. So for instance, when looking at our Asian students, the Asian students have a greater chance of being identified, causing overrepresentation in comparison to their population in the district. It's not a bad thing. Compared to our Black students who are less likely to be identified, which means we need to increase their representation to get closer to 1.0. Our goal is always to increase representation. That's it for me. Next up is a part from my colleague, John Baradoni, who will speak to the initiatives at the high school via a video.
Could I just ask a question before you move on? There's a note there, PDE threshold of 3. How does that relate to the graph that you, or the chart that you showed?
Yeah, sure.
So that was listed there just so that you know that PDE views it as an area that we have to address once we reach a 3.0. So we're nowhere close to that. So we just wanted to make sure that that was noted there, that within the disproportionality guide, that's when it becomes really alarming. But we're always striving to be better in Haverford. So we want to make sure that we have a proportionate representation of our students and everyone is being looked at to have an opportunity.
Thank you.
And I had just a question of this number. Is this a statistical number or how's it calculated?
So, you want to answer or you want?
Go ahead, Kristen.
okay.
You're the pro at the statistics.
So I wouldn't say I'm a pro at statistics by any means. That is not my area of expertise. I love it, but I'm not the expert of it. But it's actually used using a formula that is widely recognized for risk ratios across the education industry. And you might have become familiar with it during the pandemic. You would hear it on the news and things like that, where you're looking at the representation based off of the proportion of who's there. So PDE uses that similar formula when they break it down. So we try to use that same formula when we're looking at it here based off of how they look at numbers so that we're matching what they're looking at when they look at our thresholds.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good evening. My name is John Baradoni. I am an assistant principal at the high school. Thank you, Beth. I am also the co-chair with Beth on Priority 1. Some next steps we are embarking on here with our priority is expanding our training during our faculty meetings. We want to make sure we know better as a faculty and a staff how to better serve these students and how to better identify them to make sure we can get them what they need. Up at the high school where I am, we are working on a plan to identify students that are capable of entering the higher level courses such as honors and advanced placement or AP courses. We have a lot of students who are in college prep across all levels, and looking and talking with teachers at CST and other different meetings that we have, we feel that we have a larger group that could possibly move up into those higher level courses. So we like to look at the demographics of who's in the groups, how we can better serve the different demographics that we serve here at the high school. How do we identify them? How do we identify students show promise, show ability? How do we discuss in our meetings about those students? And then, most importantly, is how do we develop a support system so we can ensure that when those students move up, they can be successful and not set up for failure. It is a large jump, making a jump from college prep to AP or to honors, and we want to make sure students are not set up for failure. So we're going to work in faculty meetings, in trainings, how we can develop that support system to make sure all of our students are successful. The gifted audit has been completed at the elementary and middle school levels and high school levels. They are identifying a new screening tool that will help mitigate bias in the identification process for the students who will be entering into the gifted program. Some questions that we will reflect on. Up at the high school level, we want to make sure that we make a plan effective in identifying students who are able to make that change. And then how do we best support them? That's really a question that is ongoing and one that we are grappling with daily up at the high school so we can make sure we can identify how do we get that plan in place, what is the best plan to identify, and then how do we make sure we support them in all aspects once they make that jump to the higher levels. And then at the elementary level, how do we utilize MTSS? We already have a block of time in the schedule. How do we better utilize that time to support those students who might have made the jump or who have made the jump, who might need some small remediation so that they can be successful in those higher level courses? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question? Because when I reviewed the slides earlier, I think I caught something that I think he answered my question, but I just want to make sure I heard it right. The question, how can we utilize MTSS to support students who need small remediation? Because I was thinking, well, it's not at the high school. And then he said in there, elementary. So that was just referring to elementary.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for asking for clarification because the committee chairs cover both the elementary and the secondary. So he was covering some things for elementary as well. So next up, we have, now I hope I click it without playing the video, or I'll let you click it. There we go. So next up, we have Mrs. Brittany Butler, who is her first time coming before the board, who is our Assistant Director of Human Resources. And we will have Mr. Leon Smith, our high school teacher, who are co-chairs for the priority to recruit and retain diverse staff. So Mrs. Butler will get us started first.
Good evening. As priority 2, we want to recruit and retain a diverse staff. So by doing this and maintaining the goal of having a more diverse workforce as part of its strategic goals, we've attended several recruitment fairs let me slow down. We've attended several recruitment fairs to identify potentially diverse candidates. We visited Temple University, DVCE, Howard University, and the DCIU Job Fair. At these, we've been able to show that there's more representation of diverse staff there. A lot of students may not have known about Haverford, so it's just getting out there and basically solidifying and not advertising, but just promoting Haverford University to the city students. We've had the second annual Ford's networking event where a 28.57 increase in diverse applicants from the school year 21-22 to 22-23 for those who have self-identified during the application process. We've also initiated exit interviews to glean ways to retain staff. We did a couple of those years, and they've been very positive to know how we can retain more of our staff members just by hearing their opinions and thoughts. Dr. Rushi and Ms. Axis, they've administered a staff PSM survey to learn about the staff's sense of belonging in the district. They've held focus groups across buildings and departments just to know better what the staff got on their mind. They've developed Ms. Carter, she's developed a staff-led affinity group to Startup Guide. We've created a LinkedIn page to engage a diverse audience and share the work of the district. So when we've attended the recruitment fairs, we've just posted pictures from that. The Ford's networking event, we have that. We've shown just the positive feedback that we've received from the attendees, which was extremely great at the second annual Ford's event. Our next steps, we want to initiate insight interviews with our diverse staff to hear what we can do better to retain our staff members. And we're going to continue to develop the HR website around this goal, just putting more pictures of the HR department up to show that we're a diverse staff, putting a face to who does what so that we're all not just unknown of what each person does, for lack of better terms. So just knowing who you can go to for this person, a lot of the staff members didn't know or weren't aware of who did what, so that's what the HR website will have for everyone. Sorry, a little nervous. And then next we have Leon Smith. He's gonna talk about Priority 2 for the Grow on Your Own program. He's the high school history teacher.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think Governor, I think a part of the education state legislation is increasing teacher, we have a shortfall of teachers, and I just wonder how, like at the Ford career networking event, I mean, how do you see, the diversity of teachers coming up from, or, applying for positions?
Just getting out there and seeing a diverse staff. That helps, just knowing that they're represented more versus just seeing the same old thing for that. So do you want to?
Are we seeing increased?
Yes, there's been more applicants. There were a great number of, I don't want to say of black attendees at the event, and I've seen probably about at least 6 that applied for the positions that were at that networking event. So not being here last year, just knowing those names and putting a face to it, they've applied for the positions, and they've given positive feedback about how the culture at Haverford seems nice. Everybody was welcoming at the event, so it makes them want to apply to the district more.
Great, thank
And
you.
I can always add, thank you, just the staff that's sitting in the room, they're going through the interview process right now. And when I check in with each of them, just to see like how our attendees, if they are interviewing or how well they're doing, we're getting good feedback. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we know it's a process, but hopefully we'll see some results. But we definitely did have a more diverse group coming out, and it comes from just the advertising that Dr. Raimundos and Mrs. Butler do at the recruitment fairs and making sure they bring back the resumes. And then we are reaching out and working with our communications coordinator to make sure that they're informed about the fairs as well. So advertising is just so important because you just don't know what you don't know. And it's 501 school districts across the state of Pennsylvania, so you have to put yourself out there. So,
Can I just ask a question that I guess kind of fits in directly here? It's something that I've actually been meaning to ask for a while, but when I saw this presentation, I'm like, oh, this is the right place to ask it. I think we all noticed on one of the recent board meetings, our 8th grade principal at the middle school recently resigned, a well-regarded, well-liked person of color, hadn't been here that long, left for a lateral position. And it gave me a little flashback to last year, our seventh grade assistant principal, also very well liked. I know my boys really loved him, well-respected, person of color leaving after a short time for a lateral position. Are they engaging in exit interviews or saying what is making them leave? And if we're not getting a suitable response, at what point in time are we kind of going to have like a red flag here? Like, oh, do we need 3 people to leave? Like, is there like where we're going to have to do maybe some more self-reflection to figure out why that's happening?
I would say, yes, we've done exit interviews. We're getting the feedback, reviewing it, and just talking amongst ourselves to see what we can do better as a district to retain these employees.
You share any feedback with the board? Like,
For the recent one.
well,
that
no, you probably
no.
can't, but,
No.
okay.
Sorry.
No, but as you see, that is the next step in our process of our actual action plan is to do insight interviews. And I know Mrs. Butler and Dr. Raimondo's and even Mr. Smith has definitely looked at what does that retention look like. And you'll hear a little bit later about some steps we're doing to work on that and to learn as much as we can. So I hope I'll be able to answer some of that question about what we're doing as we go throughout the presentation. But thank you for the question. It was a great question. We're sad to lose some of our
No,
great.
I was too, but it was just like a little bit of a red flag to me as a, not just parent, but as a board member, like, knowing the esteem that the teachers held them in and that students did as well, and seeing them leave honestly for lateral positions. So it just raised a couple of red flags just to me, and I just wanted to bring it up.
It's always important is that it doesn't go unnoticed, so thank you.
I was just wondering, are there things that we're doing internally to support the diverse candidates when we bring them in? Is that something that maybe, to a later date, you can kind of speak to that, the support for once you get in, what development do we offer you? What kind of, things do we do to make you feel supported in this environment?
I can speak a little bit to it, but actually I have somebody here that might be able to speak a little bit better. So we have informal affinity groups that have been developed, and we would like to have more that start to, because sometimes you just need to hear from your own and be able to just find like-minded people to just process through things. I know in various places I've found value in that and have run those myself, but do you want to talk about some of the work that you're doing with it? Okay.
Good evening. I'm Leon Smith. I'm a social studies teacher at the high school. I think that is important. I think that anytime you come to a space, you want to feel a sense of belonging. You don't want to feel like you're the only one. And I do think that some of the work that, Ms. Panero will speak to with the culture of responsive teaching, I think is important that there's an environment that exists where people can be their authentic selves. And I think that a lot of the work that we're doing around the diversity and inclusion goals really are creating an environment where it can be a safe space where people from different communities can come and feel like they can teach and, be their whole selves. And so the affinity space, I think, is important. I do think also just even from leadership, administration, I think it's important to understand the challenges that diverse staff encounter that may be macro, that may be micro, but, building those relationships and understanding that the things that they may experience are different than other staff members, and to make sure that they're listening to them and providing the support that I think is necessary. I think all of those things are ongoing, and, that's what I would say for that question.
Well, you're up next,
Okay.
so I'll give it over to you.
So the next step, can we go to the next slide? So the next step, Dr. Shelton, you spoke about the teacher shortage that we're currently facing. Dr. Edward Fuller from Penn State has noted since 2013, we've lost about 75% of certifications from Pennsylvania institutions in terms of people that are becoming certified. And we know that in the state of Pennsylvania, there's less than 6% that we have educators of color, but they're 37% students of color. And so when we think about the importance of educators of color, it's not just important for students of color, but it's important for all students. And so certainly we want to think about how can we recruit people from outside of our district, but what can we do to create environments where our own students would want to come back and be teachers? And so part of that process is we're thinking about our Grow Your Own work, and some of the things that we've done is we've worked with the DCIU, with the Future Educators Academy, and so we've identified students in 9th and 10th grade, particularly from diverse backgrounds, that we really feel have leadership qualities that we want to really embrace and develop and really introduce them to the profession of education. And so the DCIU has worked with us, and it was outstanding. This year we had students presenting to superintendents from Delaware County, human resource directors, and these are, 14, 15, 16-year-old students engaging in high-level interviews with education professionals about their philosophies of education, right? So the fact that they're able to think about what are the important things that a student may need to be successful. So we're getting that in early. Really, when we think about the Grow Your Own program, we're really trying to create infrastructure. How can we create an infrastructure by which we can then bring students in and really develop pathways into the field of education? And we need multiple pathways into the field of education. We also are working with the Delaware County Technical School because great news last year, as you know, PDE released guidelines for CTE standards so that students can go to do CTE work and go on a path to become a teacher. And we are engaged in working with the Delaware County Technical School in their curriculum development so that some of our goals in terms of culture responsive teaching and some of the things that we're doing as a district can be incorporated into that curriculum so that if we do have students that engage in that pathway, that we can make sure that, hey, if they decide to become a teacher and they come back here, they will be trained in some of the things that we feel are important in our own district. In addition to that, these are students that can also get, because that Delaware County Technical School program has also established articulation agreements with the Westchesters and Wideners and other schools. So these are students that are not only getting an opportunity to get early experience in teaching, so that's going to help on retention, because we know people leave teaching within the first 5 years. So not only are they going to have their student teaching, but they're going to have early experience in high school, and they can get 9 to 12 credits, through articulation agreements. So we're involved in that work. The Delaware County Community College has a dual enrollment program where the Delaware County Council is sponsoring up to 70 students to get free classes where they can, again, lessen the cost of becoming a teacher. How can we make it cheaper for someone to become a teacher? That's what we got to do. And so these are, things, pathways they have available. Educators Rising, this is really exciting. We started a club where students, it's like a Future Teachers of America club. And these are ways that students can get introduced to the profession. They can network. There's a national conference going on in DC at the end of the month. They have keynote speakers from all around the country that speak to the students. And so we started a club, and part of that is to generate that early interest. How can we get students interested in the profession of teaching early? And then we're just on the ground level. We are, had an opportunity to present the PDE about how they can get more schools into the CTE, because a lot of people think CTE, they say, oh, well, you go through CTE, you just take an exam and you become, a carpenter or whatever it may be. It's a little bit different for education, but it's exciting because, again, it touches on the retention and then lessens the cost of becoming a teacher. And then just constantly going to webinars. How can we just stay close to the research that's happening on how to get more people to become teachers? So the infrastructure's there. What we need to do now is we need to invite students in. We need to invite students in. We need to have conversations with students. Hey, have you ever thought about being a teacher? How can we talk to elementary school students? How can we talk to students that are not typically identified? We need to really do that. So next year, we're looking to expand Educators Rising, hopefully go to the state competition in Pennsylvania. And then, as I said, we have the pathways there. We just need to invite students in, and that's our work for next year.
I'll just mention that Mr. Haran, Ms. Lee, Ms. Sachs, and I were at the Manoa Stepping Up, and the 5th grade students had the opportunity to talk about their aspirations, which included their continuing education plans, their career plans, and while there were a lot of professional athletes, you know, that they had their eye on that and a wide range of interesting careers, there were a good number who identified wanting to be teachers
Yes.
in that mix. So when you said tapping into even the elementary school
Absolutely.
students and how do you support that, definitely a testament to the good experience they had in elementary school and see themselves in a teacher role in a future, you know, in their future. And so it'd be great to tap into that young interest.
It would be, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I always like to note that he does this in addition, grow your own developer work, in addition to his classroom work. So you can see the passion is there, but it helps us go so far with his passion for the work. So thank you. Because we know it's not easy to teach and prepare lessons and to do that in addition.
In addition to the classroom work for which he has already been identified as one of the finalists for Pennsylvania State Teacher of the Year.
So you see, we're very happy to have him helping us with his work because he's very busy. So up next, we have our priority 3. So we have Mrs. Pinero from the high school, our assistant principal.
Good evening. So the work that we do is focused on culturally responsive teaching in the brain, as well as our professional learning opportunities that we have for our educators. So in our continued efforts to bring culturally responsive instructional practices to the learners of Haverford Township School District, we focused on some of the following efforts. So first, with our building equity teams, we continued implementation of culturally responsive instructional practices, and we increased the teacher leadership within the dignity leadership team at the high school level. We have many professional learning opportunities for staff, both through DVCEE. We had flex opportunities that we've increased and worked to increase even for the upcoming school year. And we had a number of different opportunities for teachers, both with schools having speakers on cultural humility as well as anti-Semitism. And another thing that we wanted to make sure that we focused on with our ELA curriculum audit that we went through was that our textbook evaluation tool also had a component that focused on ensuring that we were having culturally relevant and culturally responsive professional learning materials, but also curriculum materials in front of our students as well as our teachers. As we look forward to the upcoming school year, which I think is on the next slide, we have a lot of things that we'd like to look forward to, and a lot of these came from some of the questions that we have for reflection kind of leading into our next steps that you'll see at the bottom. One of the things that we're going to make sure that we do in our induction and orientation program, we will be going through the culturally relevant and sustaining education competencies with our new hires. That is something that's required by PDE. We've done it at some of the building levels with our building equity teamwork already, and we'll ensure that that's within our first year of our learning for our new teachers, as well as I already spoke on, increasing the number of flex opportunities for our staff, which we've already done through some of the work that we've done with the Professional Development Committee. Another focus for our group would be standardizing some of the work that our building equity teams are doing. So finding some common time to come together, talk about what our professional learning looks like on our different campuses, and kind of ensuring some kind of standardization across the campuses, while also still addressing specific building needs and goals for each building. And then as we work through the rest of priority 3, we have some reflective questions that we've come through. And some of those are like, what clarity can we develop in our outcomes as committee members as we move forward? And what do we really want this to look like for students and getting them involved in some of these processes? And then what are the opportunities for differentiation of professional learning opportunities? We all come in just like our students. We have a vast background of experiences. How do we honor those and then also draw from the experiences that we have and support people where they're at in our professional learning for teachers, just like we would for our students?
Thank you. And I have to say for her, we appreciate the work she does on this because she also wears 2 hats for her curriculum doing the Professional Development Committee. So we can always be ensured that the CRSC competencies that we're expected to implement are being implemented because she's crossing that over to her work when she looks at the professional development. So thank you for that. All right, for our next priority, unfortunately, our co-chairs couldn't be here this evening, but I at least want to make sure I give them credit. As you know, our teachers started on office for summer break. So some of them are unable to be here because we kind of shifted our timeline a little bit. But tonight I will be sharing on behalf of Dr. Whitehead, the principal of Chatham Park, and Mrs. Colleen Malsazinski, our counselor at the middle school. Priority 4's subcommittee is focused on student and family belonging. The overall goal is focused on using the PSSM data to create focus areas for each school to work on to increase their sense of belonging and address family sense of belonging and voice. This year, as you heard in previous presentations, principals identified 2 focus areas from last year's PSSM data to increase 2 of the 4 areas which fall under appreciated, validated, accepted, and treated fairly. They will use this year's data to analyze their growth and if their focus areas increased and if there's any work that they need to do to adjust it. That'll be some of the work that they engage in over the summertime that we regularly do. In addition, earlier this year, you heard from our district data team who works on the PSSM data. They're the ones who will be leading our administrators as well through looking at some additional areas and thinking through how they can help increase their sense of belonging among our students in the schools. Additionally, some of the work that we are doing is to increase student voice and their sense of belonging in the areas of accepted and validated. We have students who attended, as you heard, the DCIU for the future educators, but we also have students who have attended for the student forum. So for the student forum, they worked on creating a belonging playbook. I will tell you, as a little pause, I was extremely impressed by our students. Anybody who attended would say that they were shocked at just how insightful they are and how much they really understood how to cultivate and foster a space of belonging. And they were professional. It was honestly really amazing. And they put together these posters as you see up here. So know that we have some amazing students at Haverford that work with other amazing students across Delaware County. So in addition to the activities that have occurred in the DCIU, we have work occurring across our district buildings, like clubs that promote a sense of belonging. I know one is at the middle school, a book club. We have things like the No Place for Hate at the high school. So where students have a way to increase their sense and work on tasks with other individuals. So also, as I am working to transition some of the things that were under my belt and look at some of the additional teacher leaders we have within our district, Mrs. Malkazinski has been working to take over the Cultural Connection newsletter, and she has taken on this work to really engage everyone from our building equity teams and our student clubs and the leaders at the high school to adopt a month to create fast facts and information. So you may be familiar with this when you see the Haverford happenings and you see little facts about different cultural holidays throughout the month. Some of those are from our students, and some of those are actually from our staff who want to share things out. And our students were very eager to share facts to help students and families learn new things, and teachers have different ways that they can engage with it in the classroom, which is really helpful. Also, we are proud of some of our accomplishments in our work across buildings in creating inclusive spaces for families to share their culture and ways that they can honor their communities. So, for example, Chatham had the cultural share where families could come out, and that's just one example where other buildings do different things, but they had a culture share where they can come out and families could share. And I was able to attend the evening, and it was honestly a lovely event to just see how proud people were to share about their background. And this year, we also had an increase in our buildings and different groups participating in Martin Luther King Day and really doing the day of service. I will say, I was shocked at how many. I was doing a lot of driving around to get to all of them. Some of our cheerleaders started really early in the morning, so I didn't make it to their drives. But everybody in general was, they were very passionate about making sure that they honored the different holidays and respected it as we went along. Our next steps for priority 4, we're going to assess the work and action plans created by each school for their PSSM data. They will analyze the growth of this year's PSSM data and look at the needs for the 2024-2025 school year. find new ways to interview or discuss with parents and guardians, and with students to gain feedback on their lived experience in the district community, and find additional ways to engage family voice at the building level. I really appreciate the work that our co-chairs do in this area. I know it's not easy, especially those who are teaching or in the building, especially as a counselor, we know how busy it is with social and emotional wellness happening, and they're still making time to really take on extra work. We always think about what is the extra, it's the invisible tax, but they don't view it as a tax. They view it as an opportunity where they can just improve things for all. So I really appreciate all that they do. Questions for Tina? All right, so next steps we have as a whole, we will continue to do the work to align our diversity and inclusion work with the comprehensive plan. We'll continue to work with Ms. Saxa and the committee that starts to look at what are our next steps. And our action plan will continue to adjust to what comes up in our strategic goals. And we know that we're going to see more in there, so we're excited to see what the next is, but also focus on continuing implementing the steps that we need to finish our goals. We don't want this year to still just be us waiting, so we're still working within the year. So they'll still work on their implementation steps. Also, an exciting next step, which hopefully I can answer one of the questions earlier, we are engaging in book studies across all of our committees. It's very important that we continually ground or anchor ourselves in the research, and we're not just shooting from the hips. There's people who study the work, study and do more sociology work around it as well. And they've all written great pieces for us to really learn from and see how can we glean from it and apply some of it to our work. So our co-chairs will be leading those book studies. Under each priority, they have between 1 or 2 books that they could either choose what they're going to focus on. And one of the books, just to wrap back to one of the questions, is Support and Retain Educators of Color, 6 Principles for Culturally Affirming Leadership. That's one of the books that Mr. Smith and Mrs. Butler and Dr. Raimundos will be engaging in so that we can figure out what can we do to better retain our staff and support our staff along the way. So hopefully we can come back with more information to be able to share how we're doing that work as we move forward.
We look forward to a detailed book report on.
They actually have, so they do have a framework of how they're going to document it. So the educators and us create framework still, so no worries.
We expect nothing less.
Yes.
Thank you.
And finally, just taking a look and reviewing again, I always say, like, in Haverford, it's so different than in other districts that I find it fortunate that I do not have to bear the work alone. It shouldn't be one person's job, but it should be spread out across the district and leadership and teachers, because it can't get done if it just lives in an office. And so we have a full group, from the committees to our building equity teams to just even groups here at Oakmont, that really are continuing to do the work and make sure that we are carrying this work forward and come from various lenses, because I only know my perspective, but somebody else who's in a different classroom can give a different perspective that is helpful for us to move forward and continually grow. So we hope to continue this framework as we move forward. And are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have one. I really very much appreciate everybody's work that you've done and the devotion that you're putting in, passion you're putting into this. And I know that having projects like this that are passionate can rejuvenate us. I'm just a little concerned about how much time and the potential burnout that can happen. So like, I appreciate that it's being spread across, but I am curious if it's something that you could share with us, not tonight, but just in a sense of how much time people are putting into this, and it just so we have a sense of that. Because I appreciate it so much, and also respect that a lot of you are doing this above and beyond your job descriptions, and so I'd like to have a little sense of that.
We could definitely do that. We do collect for those who put in their hours, because we always make sure that we want to compensate as well for our teachers who are putting in that extra time. But we do try to keep track as much as they tell us, because sometimes our teachers, honestly, are doing work and we have to beg them to give us their activity hours. So we know what they turn in, but I don't want to just say that whatever I share in the future is that's all that they're doing, because I know they're doing so much more, because they almost feel bad sometimes giving us the information. I'm like, no, please do. We really want to make sure that we support you. So we will get you that information.
I just wanted to acknowledge the work that's being done on both sides to recruit and retain our diverse talent, but then also to identify students that are underrepresented in terms of giftedness or whatever the need is. These things really do go hand in hand. I look forward at a later date to possibly hearing what other efforts we're making to support our diverse teachers and staff. I love the affinity groups. I would love to hear more about how we can support that and how we can kind of pour into that in a positive way that helps, reaffirm our commitment and support our teachers. And then also just in terms of just how difficult it is to recruit. So it's nice to have a name to a face, Ms. Butler, because it's very difficult to go out and recruit because you're getting top talent from everywhere. And you're not just looking and saying, oh, I only want this segment of top talent. So it is an unenviable task that you all have. So thank you.
Thank you for recognizing it.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation and all of your work. I just had a question, a concern with, and a question about the equity definition on, I think it's slide number 3.
Let me go back for you.
And I know our presentation was more dealing with diversity and inclusion, but when I read through it, it kind of hit a red flag for me. When I was taught what equity was, I was told it was giving a student what they need to succeed. And the most common examples would be modifications for students with special needs, testing modifications. Things were all really commonplace and I think everybody is really familiar with. But I'm not gonna read the whole definition here, but reading that definition, particularly the end, so that the outcomes are the same for all individuals. And that was concerning to me because it's not only unrealistic, it's impossible. You can never have the same outcomes for all individuals. And that type of definition sets us up for failure. And it's also highly troublesome to me if that's guiding our district. Everyone's unique. That's a good thing. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. Even if you have two siblings raised in the same house by the same parents under the same set of circumstances, we all know they can look wildly different. You're wondering, where did this other one come from? Like that's the way life goes. I was thinking when I read that, I'm not bragging, but I was a straight A student throughout high school. My son is also at this point, but he has a math brain. Mm-hmm. And I had more an LA brain. And he has all A's and I had all A's, but I could never get an A in his, he had an A+ in AP Calc AB. And next year, I didn't even know there was an AP Calc BC. I didn't even know that until he was my son. I'm like, wow, there's more than one calculus. I could never do that. And though I had all A's in math, my coursework was a little bit different. Algebra, geometry, trig, stat. Not that they're lesser, they're just different, maybe not as complex. And so I was thinking you could never have equal outcomes. I would never get an A+ in AP Calc AB. I'd never, ever, ever. You would need him to take my courses to get A's, but I could not get A's in his. And so that definition it troubled me when I was reading it. And so I wanted to make a comment on that. And I know that was not, our presentation tonight was not really focused on equity. It was more diversity and inclusion, but I just wanted to make the comment since it was up there. And I just wasn't sure if it was just thrown up there, or if that was something that was really guiding our district's mission.
So I can give a little bit. I was always taught, I'm one of those people that think about what I put there. I was taught context is king, and I would have loved to put the whole chapter there for you to get all of the information, but I had to capture just a short bit for you to put in there. And when we think about outcomes, we don't always think about numeric outcomes. We can think about the outcomes we want socially and emotionally, or we want all students to feel like they succeed, or we want all students to understand the goal they have for themselves. But when we look at what they need to get there, what we provide them may be different, but we can have a general outcome. So no, we don't think all students are the same, but we do want to think about the goals we set when we think about what we have for the district. What do we need to provide our students to even meet some of the outcomes that we have in place? And as educators, we always reflect and we adjust as needed. So know that we are not expecting that all of our students are the same or carbon copy, but there's more to it. within the paragraph. So thank you for bringing it up, though.
I totally get what you're saying, context, but that was just didn't sit right with me, and I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it. I'm always open to comments, so thank you.
I think one thing important is that the way that we're defining outcomes, because I think that is where this sentence can end in a very different way. So you provided, I appreciate your context for what outcomes can be. Outcomes don't necessarily mean everybody get the same grade. Outcomes means much more depth and nuance on what are our goals for our students to be able to achieve in their life, given their own uniqueness. However, it's a box, and there's only so many words that we can put in, so I appreciate your clarification.
No problem. Any other question? All right, well, thank you all, and thank you to everybody who came out.
And Mrs. Carter, I would just like to add, although you will not toot your own horn, the level of organization and commitment, this woman can run a meeting, let me tell you, and like organize people and like really clarify the work. A sign of a great leader is that people understand where to go and want to follow. And Christina has inspired that, not only with this goal, but all of her work, but I think it's particularly evident in this presentation, the level of commitment and organization and passion that you've brought to this. So I wanted to say thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you all, especially those of you who are on summer break and made some time to be here. We very much appreciate that. Up next, we have Mr. Donaghy, who will be talking to us about our second presentation, which is something called a Targeted Support Improvement Plan that we will be undertaking at Haverford High School.
Just before Leon leaves.
Mr. Smith, he can't, he's
Mr. Smith, just before Leon leaves, he puts in thousands of hours. If he did a timesheet, the amount of time, he puts in thousands of hours in everything he does, okay? Not just this work, but basketball, working with the kids, great ideas, Miss Panera too. There's not a timesheet big enough for the amount of hours. And that presentation was awesome. And again, that's another presentation. Everything's in a nice fancy box. But the amount of hours and thought and care that goes into that, all of our work, not just that work, is incredible. So I just wanted to say that before you leave for the summer.
Yep, definitely. My comment is we don't want to lose Mr. Smith, so.
We're not losing him. No way. So I'm here tonight to talk about targeted school improvement. Targeted school improvement. Let me see if I know how to use the clicker. There we go. So the state of Pennsylvania reached out to us. We have an area that we need to address, so it's called targeted school improvement. Targeted school improvement is the state reaches out to you and says, you did not meet our guideline in a certain area, so we need you to develop your own plan before we put any sanctions on you or tell you what to do, in a nutshell. So I'm going to just walk you through why we're on school improvement and what we're doing to address the issue. So based on the Future Ready Index, and there is a lot to the presentation, so just stop me at any time because it is a little confusing, even with us on the team working through all these issues. We were saying, what year is it? What data is it? Who are the kids? What do we need to do? So we've come and trying to just give you a little glimpse of what this is all about. So based on our Keystone scores for our graduating class, our special education students, we fell below the 30.91% that the state sets as the guideline. All right, so you can see as combined, we're at 24.68%, and we need to be at 30.91%. And in the next few slides, I'm just going to go over how we're at that number and what we're going to do based on that number. In
Could
addition,
I ask a question?
Sure.
Understanding that our students with IEPs comprise a diverse set of
Yes.
learning needs,
Yep.
is there just one threshold from PDE, or is it calibrated, if that makes sense, to the population and their particular needs that are in our district?
No, it's just one threshold, okay? It's based on national standards too. So they give us one threshold. They don't, not really concerned who the kids are, what type of needs. I'm going to go through some of that, but that's a great question. So, and it's year to year. The line might move a little bit, but it kind of stays in that general area. So each year you might have different sets of kids, but this is where we are right now. So this is the graduating class, so based on their scores. It's also based on their growth wasn't where it should be, and then their graduation rate. You're supposed to be, for IEP students, at an 82% graduation rate. In the graduation rate includes all of our students in our PATH program. So PATH program counts against your graduation rate. Okay, so any student who continues with us, it goes against your graduation rate. So there's some, you'll see as I go through this, some slight contradiction in competing guidelines from the state. So it's a one-year designation, will be reevaluated annually. We've already started the process to work through this, and what I'll show you in the next couple slides is how that works. It's due to our 22-23 Keystone proficiency rates. However, it's the graduating class of this year, students who just walked across the stage last week. So it's based on when they were in 11th grade. At the end of 11th grade, they get their scores. So these students had the ability to take Keystone when they were in 8th grade. And I'm going to go over that in a minute. So when they were in 8th grade, COVID hit, and none of those students who were in Algebra 1, who were special education students, took the Keystone exam. Okay, so normally, students who are in Algebra 1 in 8th grade, there's usually about 125 students, 123 or 124 pass the test. Okay, they're not all special education students, but those students who are in special education who are in Algebra 1 in 8th grade usually pass the test. Okay, but they weren't, they didn't have the ability to take the test because of COVID. So.
Mr. Donaghy, just a question. Algebra 1 in 8th grade, isn't that the one,
Yes,
1A
so-
math? The
yeah, so-
high, like, I call it super high, because,
Yes.
you have grade level
Great
and
question.
high math, LA, and then you have grade level math, high math, and then I called it super high, but the 1A, so you had a high.
Pretty high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that from my older
Yeah,
son,
so-
so that is the super high math, and how many of the IEP students were?
That
in
could
the-
be, depending, this group, it's about 8 to 10.
Okay,
So students have IEPs from a wide range of needs. So you could have speech, OT, math, reading, there's all different needs. Maybe an emotional need, there's all different needs why you have an IEP. So that doesn't mean you can't be in the highest level. Yeah, so that's, so when we first got the email, our heads were spinning, and we started doing some of the research, and that's one of the reasons, something that'll change moving forward. So the required steps when you're on a plan, you have to fill out the plan, and from the state they give you it's a very formal plan that you have to fill out and work through. It's kind of like when you had our health and safety plan for COVID, or, it's a state form with a lot of boxes to check. So we've already started our steering committee. We started our needs assessment, as you can see, based on the data. We've also looked at our strengths and weaknesses of our curricular programs, our strengths and weaknesses of our specific programs for our special education students. Then you have to set goals. You have to have an action plan for next year. Even though it's a different group of kids, you have to have an action plan because you don't want any of the grades moving forward to fall under this. So you're setting an action plan not for the kids in the plan. But that's the preventative measure from the state, and that's why it's the TSI plan. And then we have to submit the plan by the end of the summer.
Does the board vote on that?
Say that again?
Does the board vote on that plan? Or does that just get submitted by the administration?
I don't think, go ahead, Ms. Saxon.
I believe we do take a vote. Yep, you take a vote, and then we have to submit the minutes with the plan when we do so.
Okay, thanks.
So we've been using the PA Future Ready Index, and that is a website that's live to the public that everyone can see. We've been looking at our IEP groups, proficient and advanced rate, and we found with our participation rate of our IEP students is lower than our participation rate of our regular education students. And you can see even down lower where it says related academics, our attendance for that group was about 65.6%. And for all students, it's 82.8%. And that was for, prior years. So you can just see we've been unearthing some things. So that's what's been, it's never great to be on an improvement plan, but it's actually been eye-opening for us to look at some of the data. We know we're doing well with our Act 158. So our Act 158 is our graduation pathways. So students who don't pass the Keystone, they all have a plan. The counselors need to meet with them. We need to meet with them and say, what is your plan for after high school? So they all have a plan. So we knew they weren't passing the Keystone, but we made sure they have a plan. So some of the students already might be in the Delaware County Technical School. 100% of the students passed the NOCTI exam, the students who just graduated. So they all have a plan, even though they don't pass the Keystones. We also have students who don't pass the Keystones that go to four-year Pennsylvania colleges. So we were putting a lot of our efforts in the Act 158, and it's just it's kind of like the competing requirements of graduation. So just wanted to point out that we are doing a great job with the Act 158 pathways. They all have a pathway, but we do want to increase their attendance rate. And then also IEP, we use state data, we use local data, we use their classes, such as Mr. Baradoni. Are they in the highest level class possible that they can be in? We do have students, and that'll be on the next slide, that are in the highest level classes who didn't take the exam. So that's one of our focuses too. So they couldn't either finish the exam or they didn't want to take it. When about 6-7 years ago, you were allowed to opt out of the PSSA and the Keystones. And you're still allowed to opt out now. However, the Keystones are a graduation requirement for your Act 158. So if you opt out, it counts for us as a 0. It counts as your non-proficient if you opt out at the high school level and you're in this group, in this subgroup. It counts as basically a 0. So we want to encourage the students to take the exam. Sorry, we're not done yet. That's one of the findings that we found, is that it counts as a 0, because we were kind of baffled. The number seems a little bit low, but if you have, say, 80 students who have IEPs per grade and 10 of them don't take the test right off the bat, you're at 83%, and that's the highest number you can get, and then it goes down from there. And then these are just some of the terms and some of the areas you have to look at and get feedback on. And this is kind of where we are. So the variety of assessments, we want to monitor what we don't want to teach to the test. That's never our goal, especially with 10, 11, 12th graders. We don't want to teach the test, but we want to look at our assessments and make sure that we are hitting the standards, which we do. We do hit the standards, but we want to make sure that when they do take the test, they're as prepared as possible. Another thing we run into is students are taking PSATs or taking SATs or taking ACTs. Keystones are a little bit different than those tests also. So, we want to just try to align all of our assessments and our philosophies on assessments so the students know they're important, to do your best. Whatever score you get, but do your best. And then we want to set up supports so that they can pass all these tests. And then we need to do a little bit better job of engaging families. There's no doubt about it. Most families, and high school is confusing with all the different tests and with the classes you're taking and applying for college, 2-year schools, going right to work. So, I've come before and talked about our job fairs and different things we do to be college and career ready. So, but we probably haven't done a great job of really saying what the importance of the Keystone exams are and why we should take them, why we should pass them, how they relate to the state's Act 158. So we could do a little bit better job of explaining that to parents. And we learned that through our discussions on the retakes with juniors this year. So we got the notice right before, a couple months before the spring Keystones. And then we went to students and said, we want you to retake the Keystone test. And they said, well, I'm Act 158 qualified. So we learned we did a great job of explaining Act 158, but we didn't do a good job of explaining why you need to pass the test. And some of the students, which is very painful for me, are a question away, 2 questions away. Like they're right there, where they passed. This is just algebra and literature. It doesn't include biology. So some students passed biology and just missed on algebra and literature, and we're encouraging them to take it again. So looking at our plan, our strengths and our weaknesses overall, 100% of the students passed the NOCTI test at this year. We just got those results 2 days ago. Normally it's in the 90 percentile, 96%. So 100%, that's the first time we've done that since I've been here. So we're very proud of that. All those students have a path. Most of those students are going to continue with whatever their area of study is at the tech school. A lot of them get gainfully employed right away, right out of high school. 6.2% of our IEP students scored advanced on literature, and literature is not an easy test. We have 28% of our kids score advanced, and 6% of them are special education students. We met growth in different areas, which we're proud of, and normally our growth is always in the blue. This year is the year, it did have a little bit to do with COVID, but we're not blaming COVID on overall on the scores. And then we have 3 full-time Lakeside counselors that we've implemented in the last 4 or 5 years that you guys have supported and allowed us to have. So they've been great additions to help with the students. Our challenges are that our enrollment increased 400 students in the last 5-6 years, which is good, but it's just more students who are just more students overall. Our percentage in special ed hasn't changed, but we just have more students overall, so we have more students in special ed. So, and with a lot of diverse needs that you guys alluded to already. Our lower participation rate, we noticed that less students took the test. They didn't opt out. They just didn't either show up or they started the test and they didn't finish it. And it's hard to force a student to finish a test when they're 17. But we feel that if we do more before the test and support them more and put them with people like them or that they, with adults that know them, that we have a better chance of them wanting to take the test, wanting to finish it, and not nervous about the test. And then we are looking for different ways to offer support. without, again, teaching the test. That's never our goal. And then some of the goals are, obviously, we want to get to 40% or higher, and we want to get to 30% or higher in Algebra 1. We feel that's very attainable. We've debated higher numbers. We figured let's just start there, get above the average, get off of the school improvement, and then we can work our way up to even loftier goals. And then there's our 73% in lit, and 77% of those students took the test. We believe it's going to be higher this year because we've already met with the juniors, the class of 2026. We already met with so we believe those numbers are going to go up. We get Keystone scores back in July, so that is a low number. That definitely had something to do with COVID. Definitely. There are the students who started high school with COVID. And then some of these students, not to get too deep into the weeds, but we are block scheduling. So some of the students did take the test, and then some were opted out, depending on the test and the year. So some took the test in the first semester, and then the state said, nobody else has to take the test. So it didn't help us. It didn't help us with our amount. So we think we can get to 95% very easily of students taking and completing the whole test. And then some of our action steps is we want to look at our intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We did get away from granola bars. We used to give them granola bars, and I know that sounds funny, but we used to give them granola bars before the test. And then COVID hit, and then we were like, no one can, we can't get all these people in a room together, just go take the test. We're not overly worried about the test. We want to make sure everybody is well. That philosophy, I think, kind of bit us a little bit, but we don't want to be gung-ho, but we want to be somewhere in the middle. You have to take the test. You're going to do well. Give it your best shot instead of just come in, take the test, get it over with. So our philosophy needs to change a little bit. Our outreach to parents, that's why our outreach to parents is important, on what our philosophy is about the test and why we need to take it. And then locations and proctors. We kind of, the last couple of years, we just kind of either alphabetical. Now the students, there are students in their IEPs who do have testing accommodations, and we do all that. But we're talking about, again, a student who might score advance, that maybe we didn't give them enough support. Maybe we didn't make the room small enough, and that's always like, how small do you make the room? Because that's not exactly in the IEP. But we didn't really say to them, if you're having difficulty, go see this teacher, or the counselors are available, or the Lakeside counselors are available. We haven't been that specific with them as to what to do. So a Keystone testing environment is high stakes, lockdown, like everybody's quiet, pencils, it's old school, where most of our testing accommodations are a little more friendlier, okay, than that on a normal daily basis. It's like, hey, come on in, bring your test. All right, we're going to get started in a minute, get a drink. Like Keystone's is like, let's go. And then we have school that day, which we're not going to stop. We don't feel we need to do that. And then we have to get all the other kids in and have school that day. So some places just take off the whole day. That's not our philosophy either. So we just have to marry the two things together. And then offer supports for retakes. It is tough to tell 11th grader, you got to come back in and retake your test with 9th and 10th graders. So if an 11th grader shows up and the 9th and 10th graders are there, the 9th and 10th graders know why the 11th grader's there. So we haven't solved that problem yet, but we're discussing it, trying to figure that out, how we can do that discreetly, how we can do it where the students want to come in, how in our conversations with the students this year and showing them how close they are, most of them were willing to come in and give it another shot. So that was really nice to see. When you have the one-to-one conversations with them, they understand. And then we're talking about what can we do we have support classes for special education students. We have emotional support classes for special education students. So is there time during those periods where we can review the keystones with them, encourage them if they just need encouragement and they don't need academic intervention? And then we're talking to our math and our literature teachers, and bio does the same thing. What can we do in class that's an intervention that it's not disruptive to the curriculum or changes the curriculum? And then we have CDT tests, which is a diagnostic that the state gives that's online that is similar to the Keystone test. We piloted that in a math class this year, and it went very well. It's just to give us more information. It's to get the kids practicing a little bit with the Keystone test and the questions they're going to see, and then it's easy for the teachers to break down the student needs. Sorry.
And again, I have one quick question
Yes.
for you, which is a very small portion of our population, but I'm curious, in years past, have we had the same logistical problem that we did this year where Keystones were offered at the same time as AP tests?
No.
Because it was a mess for a lot of students.
And I think we're going to do better this year, but, we're going to find out in a couple weeks. Normally, the Keystones are designed to be end of the course test.
Mm-hmm.
And the window was, they give you a 2-week window. And with PSATs and SATs now, they give you windows where you can move the dates around. But with Keystone and AP, you can do AP makeups if you want. But those windows are hard to move around. And we went this year the first week of the window because the second week of the window was Memorial Day weekend. And there's no time for makeups. And we, unbeknownst to us, before the plan, we went to the beginning of the window to do makeups. Now with the plan, we have to go the first week of the window because we need the students, we need 10 days to provide an opportunity for all the students to take the test. Because that's what we found. Some students weren't taking the test and they can pass the test, no problem. They just didn't feel up to it, that the anxiety levels were too high, whatever the reason was. So yeah, it was tough. It was tough having them in the same week.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing in January every year. It'd be better if even in January, it's not the end of but it's closer to the end than May is for us. So we give it twice, just so everybody knows. We give Keystones for first semester students in January, and then we give Keystones in May for the second semester students or year-long students.
I have a question.
Yes.
Super quick question, going all the way back to the beginning. No, just kidding. But, if we don't improve on this, we're at risk for more strict strategies. Like can you quantify that threat for me? Like, what does that mean? Are they going to take more money from us? Like, what are they going to do?
No, I don't think it's a money thing.
They'll just assign us someone who can support the development of a longer plan. So it would be a 3-year designation that would follow that instead of a 1-year designation, so that we would just sort of plot out more strategically with a longer term goal.
Okay, that just gave me a little bit of anxiety. I get it. We need to improve.
Yes, we need to improve. And so here's the $1,000 question here. Does it cost any money? We don't think it's going to cost a lot of money. The classroom diagnostic tool is free on the PDE website, but we need a little bit of funds just for some extra support so students who can't do the support during the day and might need to do it at lunch or might need to do it a little bit before school or after school because they're not available, but they're willing to do support at different times. We would just need a little bit of funding to pay the teachers outside, if it's outside their contracted day. And then the biggest thing is just continuing to fund our support services. our Lakeside counselors, our regular counselors, and I know you guys do, but I just wanted to put that in there. We think that's one of the biggest things is making sure the students have support. Everybody walked across the stage last week has it planned, and we could tell you their plan. So we just want to continue that, but they don't have a plan without all the support services that we have, all the counselors, all the extra stuff we do, their special ed teachers. You know, we've added school psychologists over the years, so it's the support services are what we really believe are making a difference and are going to make a difference. And then we just need professional development. We don't believe we need to bring in trainers. If we need to bring in a state trainer, they'll do it for, you know, free or very low cost. So we're not looking at anything where we're saying adding teachers or doing anything that costs a lot of money. The steps we've already undertaken this year for next year's class. So we're going to get the scores this summer. We've had one-to-one conferences with students and talked to many parents. Both of them went very well, very appreciative, and those kids, again, most of them are already Act 158 qualified. So it's just been good just having the extra input from the students on the whole process. We've already done retakes. A bunch of students came this year, way more than in past years. We used the teachers quickly developed the Desmos course and Canvas course for students if they wanted to use it before the test, because some of the students hadn't had the class in a year. Some of the students were fortunate to be in Algebra 2, which is sort of an extension of Algebra 1, so their teacher could review it right in the class with them. But they made a little Canvas course, an online course, in case they wanted to just do it on their own at their own pace. And then we have already spoken. We have a group of teachers that are already on the committee, but we've already spoken to the counselors, our emotional support teachers, our special ed teachers at the faculty meeting. I went over it not as in depth in this, but so everyone's aware of the gravity of this. Anytime the state tells you to do a plan, there's gravity to it. So I think we're in a really good spot right now. And then, like I said, we've already gathered the feedback. We're going to revise the plan and give it back to you in July for your review, and then you'll see in depth some of the things I talked about, just how that looks, and what we're going to do next year in the classroom and outside the classroom to help support the students. And then we have to submit it by September. Questions?
Just a question in terms of numbers. I know you were saying, we're penalized by students who don't take the test. And so if you have, 10 kids off the bat, how many kids are we talking, like how many IEP kids did you have and how many didn't take the test?
So we had, in that group, 65 students, 11 did not take the test, depending on whether it was algebra or literature. So one was about 8 or 9, and one was 10 or 11 did not take the test. So out of 65. So right off the bat, and then some of them get a no score if you don't complete the test.
Okay.
So that again is a 0. It's basically a 0. So we looked at those students, and out of, say, the 11 students, we looked at the 11 students, and we knew right off the bat that 5 or 6 of them would have passed the test if they took the test. They do well, they get A's and B's, they're just, whatever their philosophy is on standardized testing, they didn't take it, they didn't want to take it, it would have been too much for them on top of their normal schoolwork. So for whatever reason, they didn't take the test. And then some of the students, like I said, in 8th grade, all of them would have passed it. So that was another, say, 3 students. So it ranges. It ranges, like, it's hard to explain, but we would have had 11 more students pass each test.
Okay.
If they took it and finished it and did it, based on what we normally score.
And two more quick questions, and this is it's just something that I don't understand. So I know the PSSAs, you can opt out,
Yeah.
it doesn't hurt the student. I guess I had in my head the keystones you had to take, like PSSAs, I know the district wants you to take them, but you don't have to take them. I, for some reason, had it in my head that you had to take them, so I'm wrong
Yeah,
on that?
well, you can still opt out.
Okay.
You can still opt out. Most of the parents, why I mentioned that was, years ago, there was more of an opt-out at the elementary level. So those kids are now at the high school, and the parents are like, I'm opting out. And we have to call them and say, can you tell us why you want to opt out? Because this is a graduation requirement. If you don't pass, you have to go to this pathway or that pathway. And most of the pathways, we believe the student and the parent when they tell us that, but we don't have the information whether they got in a four-year school or whatever the plan is until they're seniors. So we're just, going on their good word that we're going to get that. So it's basically a requirement now. It's a requirement. It's a graduation requirement to pass the Keystone. So.
Or you have to take another pathway.
You have to take another pathway.
Okay, now that makes sense.
That's the confusing part, because that's the first pathway, is passing the test.
Okay.
And so when some of the students were younger, they opt out. And when we called the parents, that was one of the things. They would say, well, I opted out before. Why can't I opt out now? And it's because the state added the Act 158 in the last couple of years.
Okay. All right, so then that's what I thought
Yeah,
you had to
it's
take. I mean,
confusing.
there's another way to graduate without
Yes,
taking it, but
it's
you have to
yes.
go a different pathway. Okay. And then given that you don't have a lot of control over, I mean, you can talk to the students, talk to the family, you can give them granola bars and chocolate bars and whatever that you want to, I mean, is this a problem facing, I mean, there's only so much you can do that's in your, is this a problem that's facing a lot of other, I would think, other districts? I mean, is this a common thing that people, I'm just curious if you happen to know that.
It depends on the district, and this year is a little bit weird for us with the opt-outs and block scheduling versus not block scheduling, and how it didn't count for some of our students. So there's other districts who are on school improvement. I thought it'd be more. Like, I obviously researched it. As soon as I got it, I was like, this is a mistake. But we looked. There are some that are on it, not everyone. Yeah.
Just a small note is that the presentation you showed is not the version that was in.
Yes, I apologize. That the updated version was displayed here, and we will provide, there were two slides that we had made updates to that didn't make it onto the version that was posted. So we will make sure that that corrected version gets posted. What Mr. Donaghy presented tonight is the official one.
Thank you for that. I think it demonstrates the complexity of when we talk about assessment data and the nuances and context. And one of the takeaways for me is seeing the thoroughness with which the school is responding, tackling the information, the data, looking at the student situation, looking at alternatives or extra supports or whatever to address it. And so appreciate the thoughtfulness that is going into it, even when there may be some underlying questions about how justified it is.
And I did undersell it. Again, these PowerPoints always undersell everything, but every office in the district's working on it, except maybe business, but we'll hit them up sooner or later. But
they'll have to pay
we've already
for
had
something.
special ed, Ms. Carter's already involved, Jeff and Sandy are involved, like everybody's involved in the whole district. So, and everybody has a piece of it. All the teachers know, the assistant principal, like everybody has a piece of it. And I did undersell that a little bit, but yeah. And anytime something like this, it's shocking, but the data is the data, so we have to make changes.
Thank you, Mr. Donaghy. And I just wanted to mention a special shout out thank you to Mrs. Monroe, who is also here, the secondary coordinator, supervisor of special programs, who has been contributing to the plan and supporting students who have IEPs on the daily basis and their teachers as well. So thank you to you as well for being here. So that concludes our presentations. The next item is information items, and we do not have any information items. So our portion is concluded.
Okay, and then that opens it up to a time for public comment, and I see someone working their way to the microphone now. Time for public comment.
Okay, this is Rich McGlory again. I live at 1246 Dill Road, Havertown, Pennsylvania. And I asked everybody to say this because, let me tell you something. What went on tonight was very emotional for me. Because that first classroom that I taught in was all black students who did not have the benefits of what we give our kids in this district, okay? Some of you came to Manoa's graduation and you saw what a diverse student population does for our children. In that school I taught with, at University City High School, I stayed there 20 years. It was all black students for 20 years with some Asian students mixed in. We did have a very diverse faculty, which was enlightening to me personally. They all became my lifelong friends, and the principal I consider my black father. Because without him, I would not be the person I am today. I was the building rep for the teachers. I spent hours with him during school hours, after school, during the summers, okay? When I moved on to administration, I had the benefit of working in very diverse schools, which were so much different and so much better. I worked at Furnace High School in South Philadelphia, which is a wonderful school, very diverse with many cultural differences, Asian students, black students, and it's a mecca for the Asian students. I just went to a retirement dinner the other night at that school. It's still a wonderful school community. I went on to Mastbaum, which was a vocational technical school. Very diverse, very Latino, driven school, wonderful school. I loved it there too, okay? But the school I loved the most was Manoa Elementary School, okay? Because of what those kids do, I go there every morning. Not because I have to. I can say to my son, take your kid to school, please, anytime I want. But I say, it's my job because I love the school. I love the kids. Watching those kids in that playground is a beautiful thing to see. Talking to the parents of very diverse parent population every morning is wonderful to be part of. So that was one of the best experiences I had, watching all the work that you did for diversity and your presentation, because it matters. So I saw the tiredness in your eyes for about 4 or 5 hours of straight meetings, but that, you know, what you do for your diversity initiative is the most important thing that you do in our district. Thank you. I guess we'll do wit and wisdom next week. Because it fits in with the second part.
Okay, good.
How to meet the needs of all.
And it's only been about 3 straight hours of meetings, for the record, but very rich 3 hours, very involved. Anyone else would like to address the committee? With that, then we are concluded. Thank you, everybody. Good night.